Today I'm going to show you the tools and techniques I use to restore the headlights on my Toyota MR2. With nothing more than sandpaper and polishing compound, I was able to restore the nasty old headlights, which started out looking like the one on the left, and made them both look like the one on the right. In the past, I had tried those headlight restoration kits, the ones that you get that you use with the cordless drill, but I never seemed to have much luck. I would either run out of some part of the kit, like the polish pad or something, before I could finish, or my final results just didn't look that great. Minus the sandpaper itself, I spent around $40 on supplies, and now I can refinish 5 or more sets of headlights. I will include the links below to the exact items I used. We're going to sand it. First grit we're going to use is 400, and all of these sanding processes we're going to do wet. Doing it wet helps keep the material cool and helps all the material you're removing keep from contaminating the sanding pad. So one of the things that's important if you're going to do it wet, make sure you plug your electrical devices into a GFCI outlet, and if you don't have one, I'll leave a link to one down below where you can buy and put one in line. This will protect you from being shocked or worse yet, electrocuted. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is use isopropyl alcohol and get as much of this black material off as I can, and get any dust or any other items that might make it scratch worse when we go at it with a random orbital sander removed. You can see quite a bit of stuff's coming off. It's not really removing the paint though. The paint's kind of stuck on the plastic. It's important not to use any chemicals on plastic lenses like carb cleaner or brake clean, because it'll actually melt the plastic and you'll just be left with a gooey mess that you'll never be able to polish. So you can use water if you want, window cleaner. I just like alcohol. It seems to cut a little better and quicker. Give it a little bit more here. Alright, that's pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is, this actually has a rubber gasket on it that goes around. And I'm going to use some of this Meguiar's Ultimate Black Plastic Restorer first. The idea is if this is dry and nasty and you sand it, all that sanding material and grit will get trapped in the pores of this rubber, and you'll play hell trying to get it back out. So just right now, while I can, I'm just going to put a little bit of this on there and treat the rubber. I'm not even really worried about polishing it or anything like that. I just want it in the pores of the rubber, which will let me remove anything that gets on it easier after we're done sanding on the lens. Alright, that's pretty good, and that's really the only piece of rubber that's exposed that I need to worry about. Alright, on to sanding. So the important part here is this interface pad. It's actually a foam piece, and what this will do is it helps the sandpaper contour to the surface you're sanding and not create hot spots. And it's important not to create a hot spot. We need a uniform surface. So we're going to go ahead and line these little holes up, even though these holes are more for dust collection and we're wet sanding. We're just going to go ahead and do it anyway, just so it sits on here better. And like I said, all of this is going to be wet, so make sure you have a GFI protected outlet if you're plugging anything at your sander in. Otherwise you could have problems. So here we go. One of the things we're looking for is we want to make sure that we don't make it worse by having balls of material on the bottom of the sandpaper. We want to keep the sandpaper wet and clean. We want to keep the surface that we're working on wet and clean. See, we're almost done with removing the black paint. And we have a pretty consistent sanded surface. So it's looking good. At this point, we're ready to go on to our next grit of sandpaper. Notice it's a little messy, so keep that in mind before you do this inside your house or on carpet. So our next grit we're going to go to is actually 2000. We're going to bump up quite a bit. You see now the material we're removing is actually white, so that's actually the lens plastic itself, which means we're getting close. So notice how it's a little bit clearer than the last grit we used. We can actually start to see what the finished item is going to look like. So now we're going to switch up and go to 3000 grit. And same thing, we're going to keep it wet. And we're going to keep moving to avoid creating any hot spots and sanding through or damaging the lens. Now 3000 grit sandpaper is where I actually stopped with the first light that I showed you in the side-by-side with this. But since then I have been able to find and purchase some 5000 grit sandpaper. So I'm going to try on this one to go to 5000 and see if that makes a difference and makes polishing a little bit quicker. So like I said, this 3000 is totally optional. I didn't use it on the first lens and it looks pretty good. So it's up to you if you want to go this far. Actually, that doesn't look bad at all. You can probably get away with just putting that on the car as is. Maybe put a little UV protector on it. Calling it good. So, yeah, let me get a towel and we'll dry that off and see what that looks like. Drying it off shows you it's still foggy, which means it's going to need the polishing compound. But overall, I think we've done a real good job, and by using the 5000 grit, I probably shortened the amount of time we're going to have to polish it with the polishing white compound pretty extensively. So let me get set up for that. Okay, now we're ready to polish this lens. What I've got is a Meguiar's Plastics Clear Plastic Cleaner and Polish. And you could do that by hand, but I prefer not to, so I'm going to use a drill with a foam polishing pad on it. This is how I did the first one. So, we'll see how it goes on this one. I'm just going at it slow. I don't need to go fast because I can't control the drill and the lens if I go too fast, so I'm just letting the polish do the work for me. I want to make sure I do it while it's wet. I don't want this polish to get dry, and if it does get dry, we're going to add more polish. I don't want it too shiny because oddly enough I'm putting it back on the car, and I don't want this to be the cleanest part of the car. That's looking pretty good. Let's get the other one and compare. This could use more polishing. Yeah, we'll give it a little bit more polishing. And then we'll call it good and clean it off and put the sealer on it. Alright, my hands are tired, so we must be there. There we go. Yeah, that looks really good. I'm happy with that. Alright, so now we're going to put the sealer on it. Before you put the sealer on it, though, you're going to have to remove the wax. Because if the wax is on there, all you're going to be doing is putting the sealer on the wax, and when the wax wears off, your sealer's going to leave with it. So I'm going to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean this and get that wax off of it. So the headlight sealer, basically you're just supposed to spray it on and leave it. So that's what we're going to do. Now that we have it all cleaned off, we're just going to spray this. Spray that on there, and we'll wipe it off. Get a clean towel. Just lightly wipe it. There we go. So when that dries, that'll be ready to install. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and give us a thumbs up and subscribe if this is the kind of content you like. We do other things as well. Thanks.